of. Sorry, I've actually been talking, but I didn't realize I was muted. So good afternoon. Dear participants, distinguished friends, I am pleased to welcome you to the last for the year of our Nigeria history series that is dedicated to our examining sectors and activity areas of national life and drawing from the experience of people who have been engaged in this sector as participants, policymakers, and private sector leaders in the area. And to draw out of the conversation an approach to public choice that would be much improved and lead us to greater effectiveness. And today, we are focusing on an area that is fresh and perhaps not much understood by many people in our country. The blue economy. In 2017, the CVL annual lecture focused on the subject of ocean-facing cities. We invited Professor Paul Collier, who's director of African economy at Oxford, and one of the leading scholars in the economics of ocean-facing cities. This lecture was of such high impact that the then governor of Lagos State, Mr. Akinwumi Ambode, who was at that lecture, promptly invited Professor Collier to deliver the 50th anniversary lecture of Lagos State on the same subject. I am coming straight out of a lunch meeting right now, straight out of a 14-hour flight into this lunch meeting on the maritime sector. Which is a monthly meeting to discuss issues in the maritime sector. And our focus today was on interagency cooperation and collaboration in the maritime. There was a collective agreement that the Nigerian maritime sector has underperformed in an extraordinary way. As we talk about a country in which as we talk about a country that's broken all poverty records in recent times, the fact that we have a coastline that we have, providing us opportunity for maritime activity and failing spectacularly to take advantage of that to have economic growth of the nature we should, shows some fundamental problem, both in governance in Nigeria and in strategy for growth and development for the economy. It is with all of this in mind that we approach the challenge of the blue economy, which can provide us huge opportunities for new wealth creation, jobs that can help us move from potential time bomb that our youth bulge has given us to what can essentially be a demographic dividend. Today we have compatriots who have been engaged in the area of the blue economy with us, and we're going to be turning to them for insights into what really the blue economy is, why we have not harvested appropriately from the opportunities of the blue economy. And I would like to begin our conversation by inviting to set the tone an academic, an economist who's worked on this subject significantly lately, Professor Chris Ekong, to basically, first of all, put context to the challenge of the blue economy for Nigeria, and perhaps indicate why we suboptimize so much, given the possibilities for growth from the blue economy. So, Professor Ekong, if you would please kindly lead off our conversation here.
Thank you very much, Professor. And I hope you are hearing me, sir. And
yes, I can hear you clearly.
Hearing me. Thank you. The blue economy, although it's new, had always been there and subsisting. There are two major economies, like we all know, the green economy and the blue economy. The green economy actually is our air that we've totally unsustainably devoured. And the blue economy includes our marine and aquatic species in the oceans, coasts, seas, rivers, lakes, groundwater, wetlands, and floodplains. Those are totally what we put up as a blue economy. And crisis in the world, the climate change in the world today have been as a result of our unsustainable use of the green economy. And because of that, we've seen cases of climate change and issues. And it's almost like we have totally used the green economy. That's why development has started to stall. Instead of growing at the rate the nations of the world were growing before, were getting stalled because alternatives are not actually just there again in the green space. So the blue space offers a whole lot and varied opportunities. But are we using the blue space, or are we using it even sustainably? Nigeria is where we are looking at now in terms of understanding and even using the resources that are there in the blue economy. Like I've defined, it includes the oceans, the lakes, the seas, the rivers, wetlands, and even floodplains. And if you see the resources that we have as a country in this, our blue space, it will be, it's very, sometimes I think that we are a people who do not recognize what God has given us to our possession. Because if you look at even national development plans and even subnational development plans, you don't see a conscious effort at developing the resources, the economic resources of the blue spaces. So this is I am so excited that you are making this this call now more national and more international for people like us to come into this space to discuss what we have in our blue economy. This country is not a country that should be looking for what to do, should be looking for development when we have it already with us. The issue now is if we take up the planning on how to develop the blue economy, are we going to do it sustainably? Because already we have started. Even the indiscriminate, the informal harvesting of the resources of the blue economy is actually starting on a very unsustainable manner. And this unsustainable manner is making us even fail from where we are starting. So the blue economy resources are there. It is open there for us. And it is a strategy, the theories that we want to take into the actual harvesting the blue economy, like is done in countries like China, in Indonesia, and other Eastern European countries that are doing a lot of investment in their blue resources and their blue spaces. So I think that's where the conversation today is going to actually domicile.
Well, thank you. In a way, it seems or sounds, I don't know whether to say psychedelic or new vogue to talk about blue economy. But 40, 50 years ago, we were all consumed, as it were, with conversations around the law of the sea. The law of the sea conferences that took place were essentially a struggle to determine the blue spaces, the rights of nations in those blue spaces.
Yeah.
As a result of the law of the sea conferences of many years ago, we have, if we will, positions that determine, for example, the offshore drilling of oil in Nigeria. We can explore beyond that traditional 12 nautical miles, into up to 360 and so on and so forth. The question that needs to be engaged here is how much are we doing to look at the human capital that's required to be competitive in the blue space. Now, we know that there are countries that have specific strategies around that. If you take the Philippines, it's a major source of revenue for them to train people who then crew ship around the world. The Philippines has become a seafaring nation. And whether the ship are flying Liberian flag, Nigerian flag, flag, the seafarers are well-trained Filipinos. We take example of Egypt. Egypt is there on the one hand, just facing the sea, with the Suez Canal being a thoroughfare linking one sea to another sea. But Egypt focused, for example, just by having a school on underwater painting. And so around the world, if you want to do underwater painting, one of the things that you do literally like a Pavlovian response without even thinking is to turn to Egypt for people with those kinds of skills. In Nigeria, with our long coastline, there isn't clarity about what our skills base may be. how can we begin to engage this kind of challenge in building the blue economy? How do we build human capital, the people who become entrepreneurs in the blue economy? And how much have the traditional agencies in that sector, the NHS of this world, been able to do? We are supposed to have the DG of NIMASA with us on this call, but I got a call from his SA about 15 minutes ago that he's in a meeting with the minister who will come out and join. I wanted to put this question to him directly to start with. I do know that NIMASA is supposed to be sort of a lead off for the maritime college in Oregon, where we're supposed to be training seafarers. But the perennial problem and question is whether you actually have seriousness of purpose coming out of Oron, and whether we have a clearer agenda on regulatory issues around that space. So is NIMASA's mandate. Perhaps how all of this relates to the blue economy could be something that you could continue to reflect on, Professor Ekong, as we deepen our conversation here. You have to unmute yourself. We're not hearing.
Okay, thank you. I think the first thing Nigeria has to do here is not to adopt ad hoc policies and have ad hoc agencies that do not come together to put things in place. There should be a national macroeconomic strategies on developing the blue economy. We have several agencies that have access or do things with the blue. You said something about the law. I think international law in terms of ocean boundaries or river going boundaries between countries of the world are obviously and rightly stated. We know where our boundary ends. Other countries also know theirs. And I think these actually are also kept and defined by the customs and navy. But the issue is, who are the agencies? Because there are several agencies, several authorities that are doing things on the blue space, but there is no convergence. There's no convergence amongst them, because everybody is doing things on their own. MPA is doing its own thing, NIMASA is doing its own thing, and there are several groups ahead who are actually doing things on the bigger water and the smaller water. Then also, how are we tying the small blue resources that are in the subnational to what we have at the national space, for international marine space? How do we tie it together? How do we bring all the agencies together so their policies will be the same? Because we have agencies that are implementing very diverse policies that are attacking each other. So the first thing the country must do is to have a national macroeconomic strategy for the blue economy. First of all, bring all the agencies that are responsible, transport, NIMASA, MPA, all of them, that even at the subnational level, you bring them to a big picture, to a close picture, and let them develop strategies that will link all the blue spaces together and the management of these blue spaces. Then once you do that, you can now identify what is in any of the blue space and where do you put human resources to in this area, because there are areas where you need seafarers. discovered in our waters. There are areas where you need people to train in this area to be able to be functional in developing such industries that these minerals had been discovered. Also, in the area of tourism, how are we standing in the area of tourism? Because our coastline is where we can develop several tourist sites that will be, that will, it will make the tourist site of some countries actually too small to our own. So what are we doing? What are we training? Do we have the skill set in that? Develop the human strategies or human capacity strategies for these areas that we have seen. So I think the first thing is for the country to build a national a strategic plan for the maritime sector by bringing all the ad hoc institutions into one and making it a real goal for us to develop in that area.
Yeah. Now, it's appropriate that I mentioned here the maritime sector brunch that we had today. A presentation was made by Dr. Chris Asoluka, who actually proposed a maritime ministry that will deal with the blue economy and the agencies of the maritime. And I think perhaps it might be a good point to invite Dr. Asoluka in to perhaps share some of the thoughts. We, at that meeting, burrowed quite a bit into the lack of effectiveness in that sector, into the fact that this obsession with revenues and pointing to revenue to GDP ratios that are but without focus on how the sector is this a desire time pulled together as part of a clear national strategy to build growth, reduce unemployment and poverty, and so on, that we need to perhaps locate the maritime sector. So perhaps Dr. Saluka can speak to this subject.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Like Professor Kong said, he, very succinctly defined the blue economy and the areas it could affect. My own analogy would be like people who go to new areas and they start building their houses before the roads and other provisions are made. If you are not careful, you see that you are developing a slum because the roads will now have to obey the structures already erected. So in order to, whether you like it or not, there's so much policy incoherence and there is so much silo-mindedness amongst these agencies, so that the kind of collaboration and cooperation they need, knowing that the focal point of the national policy could mean growth, and their growth could be in the area of how much they collected. Not everything is not in the short run. It's like even in microeconomics, you look at the problem of the agency problem, where the management or the chief executive, in order to report well to the shareholders, will exploit mindlessly the resources of the company. If the company after his tenure dies, it's not of his business. And we have seen that the agencies should begin to talk to one another. And in my studies, I have found out that the critical point is the agencies neither talk with one another, nor would they even embrace their external stakeholders. And because of that, even the external stakeholders they don't define and they don't appreciate the boundaries of these agencies. And for that reason, I think it's high time we got a coordinating ministry to cover the maritime resources, because the maritime resources now and in future is bigger than the dying sector of oil and gas. And whether you like it or not, with the abundance of potential we have, from coastline to population to traffic and whatever that could make us more competitive and to start it all, if you define maritime optimal space to include having the backward integration and linkages, I think the only way to go, if I must submit, would be to have a Minister of Maritime Resources. Even if they want to lump it with the Minister of Transport or Transportation, the Maritime Minister should not be a subordinate minister, because there will be a lot of policy for FEC to consider, and there are a lot of innovations that must accompany such a gesture. But it is important that the focal point of the Maritime Resources Ministry will be to take advantage of the emergent blue economy, as well as bring policy coherence and coordination in the ministry that is like a giant sleeping and waiting to be woken up. And for now, let me stop at this point. Thank you. Hello?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute. Yeah. All right.
Did you hear?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And I was trying to raise the issue of the points that we were exploring this afternoon about inter-agency collaboration above and beyond the coordinating ministry. How would responsibilities, for example, be shared amongst the various agencies if we were to ratchet up capacity to play in the blue economy? I mean, where the opportunities vary from fishing, trawling, and all of that, to oil and gas, to even aquatic agriculture, if you will, and to the shipbuilding, etc., various aspects. What would be required to build cooperation that would be optimally focused in economic growth? How should these agencies distribute, if you want to do specialization, who should do what, such that effectiveness can be achieved and growth essentially flow from that. How should these agencies relate with one another and specialize to be able to enhance the blue economy?
Am I still expected to come in?
Yeah, Dr. Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
you can come in there.
Okay. You see, most things should be driven by proper policy and not a kind of pillar to post approach. In terms of the agencies existing in the Ministry of Transport, you'll be surprised that in the blue economy, fishery, oceanography, all these agencies, they relate and their functions a kind of are interlinked with the concept of blue economy. When we say you carve out a specific ministry, which could have a cabinet position in order to escalate issues of decision immediately to the president. Otherwise, you could see the blue economy being taught under the presidency. And that could be one of the, it could be good in policy, but poor in execution, because all the departments under the presidency, they could have a kind of advantage in terms of escalating the policies, but in terms of implementation, I think a strong minister with a kind of supervision in these blue economic areas, as well as the traditional maritime agencies like MPA, NIMASA, and NIWA, and Shippers Council, Maritime Academy, Oron. If there is a central clearing, point with a guiding policy, because the other day, we spoke about the absence of a national transport policy, not to talk of a maritime policy. People always remember 1987 maritime policy, which actually wasn't a policy. It was merely the UNCTAD 4 domestication that Nigerians now regarded as a national maritime policy that established the defunct National Maritime Authority. By national maritime policy, there is a purpose. We know where we want to go, what we want to achieve. And the ministry will be like the catalyst to translate such national goal. In terms of what you're saying, yes, there will be some redistribution so that oceanography, fishery, or such areas, including some national agencies, like you have Lagos State Water Resources and all that. And we could also have another look at critical agencies like MPA. During the time we took National Assembly members to Rotterdam in order to observe the concept of landlord port operates. One of the most surprising gifts they had, and that influenced their agreements for the concessioning of the ports in Nigeria, was when they realized that Rotterdam, that was number 3 port then, was owned by a local government council, not even by a state government. And that came when they visited the National Assembly of Holland, and they were asking the National Assembly there about issues of Rotterdam port, and they said they didn't know because that belonged to the council, not even the state. So these agencies can be streamlined. It's a work in progress, but it's for us to recognize that where the future in terms of economic growth, in terms of job, is in the maritime domain, and as captured in the blue economy, focus.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now, I'll return to Professor Ekong now in terms of national planning. obviously one of the problems we have had is that national planning kind of disappeared from a national economic agenda work around. Of course, the Washington Consensus, which focused on and favored, more private sector kinds of initiative, generally did not play up planning, because planning was generally seen in the light of the Russian-Soviet model. But if today we are to try and grow this sector, surely we're going to need, even if it's industrial policy that enables that sector to grow quickly and so on and so forth. What would you say should be the cost of travel for national planning, relative to growth? Sorry, can you hear me? Professor Ekong.
I think he's offline.
He's gone off, eh?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the central issue, as Dr. Bashir Jammu joined,
Hi, Prof. This is Ubong. Hello, everyone.
yeah.
Yes. The DG is still in a meeting with the Honorable Minister as we speak. As soon as he's out, we'll patch him through to join the conversation, sir.
Okay. Ubong, the master as an agency has very often staked out a view as the lead agency interested in the blue economy. What general positions around it does the master try to identify and engage with?
Well, the much I can speak to at the moment is that we now have an expanded committee on the blue economy with the vice president as the chair, and then membership coming from various other agencies, even beyond the Ministry of Transportation, given the sheer size and scope of the blue economy. And the argument for this arrangement is that since the vice president chairs the National Economic Council, the blue economy or the blue issue is an economic issue. And so the vice president's office now chairs this expanded committee. And that is where we are at the moment, with a number of activities with subcommittees already working towards an overall national strategy. that is where we are at the moment.
Hello, Prof. Ubong is not speaking. Can you say something?
Yeah, just okay. Are you back?
Dr. Emeka was raising his hand up. Emeka Akabogu. I don't know. Does he still want to say something?
That's Ubong speaking on that line.
No, not Ubong.
Oh, really?
I think, yes, Dr. Emeka Akabogu wants to say something.
Thank you very much, Prof. Sorry, I couldn't make the session you had earlier in the day due to a conflict of schedule. But for this particular session, I find the subject very interesting. And I didn't comment when the Prof was making his earlier intervention. However, from the bits I can get and from the interventions of Dr. Asoluka, I just want to chip in that, you know, in this concept of the blue economy, in mapping an implementation strategy for the blue economy, it will be, I'm not sure, focusing on the more traditional agencies under the Ministry of Transport, as you indicated, Professor Tommy, that is NIMASA, MPA, and Shippers Council, will be an appropriate approach. Reason is that these three agencies are but just a very tiny, minuscule fraction of what constitutes the blue economy generally. So, you know, these agencies may be said to represent simply the shipping and freight components to an extent. But beyond the shipping and freight, we've got, as you've indicated, aquaculture, we've got oil and gas, wind farming, telecoms, even security, hydrography, ocean sustainability, I may add. And in fact, you may even say real estate. So there's a much wider framework of engagement. Now, there's a chap called Commodore Atakpa of the Nigerian Navy, who has done significant research on this subject of the blue economy. He used to be the Navy's chief hydrographer. I think currently he's with he's a commander of one of the Navy's, he's the commander of one of the Navy's ships in Bielsa. But he's done significant research. He's created a broad template of activity and regulation, which could be essentially used as a map for developing the framework for the implementation of the blue economy. Okay, Dr. Asoluka has mentioned the importance of a Ministry of Maritime Affairs, which is the same thing that Dr. Abakoba mentioned last week at the Nigeria International Maritime Summit. And I think most people are in agreement with that. It's important to have a Ministry of Maritime Affairs. Now, the question, going to the question which you asked, which is, how do we now begin to aggregate the initiatives of the various agencies involved? I think that what needs to be done is a blue economy focused policy roundtable. I do not know how far the Vice President's committee has gone. However, if the Vice President's committee is working with a mandate towards developing a strategy, it will be useful to see precisely what they have. But I think that critical should be identifying the mandates of all existing agencies, both within the Ministry of Transport and outside the Ministry of Transport, which constitute or have roles to play within this blue economy space. To what extent do the current mandates of these agencies see an intersection in terms of the impact on stakeholders, in terms of taxes, in terms of operations, in terms of even regulation? What extent do these agencies intersect? So that we begin to identify the relevant intersections and the relevant interfaces and conflicts. And we begin to silo these intersections in a way that ensures that we working across purposes. It is only after that is done that we can now effectively mandate a Ministry of Maritime Affairs, propose a Ministry of Maritime Affairs with clearly delineated functions. So I think that should be the end game, a Ministry of Maritime Affairs with various agencies identified where all the mandates which exist and then which need to exist have been clearly mapped. And then we can begin to see clearer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now the immediate challenge that I have in looking at growing the market, the maritime economy and the blue ocean strategy, or the blue strategy. And I try to distinguish those two very quickly, because in strategy, blue ocean, as opposed to red ocean, really is a distinction between the startup, clean startup, and the one with the base. The blue ocean, or the blue economy strategy, does need to be formulated in a manner that it can become the focal thrust of growth strategy. We have had competing paradigms in terms of strategy for growing out of where we are. The increasing acceptance of playing the latent comparative advantage, where value chains and competitiveness in those value chains are focused on. How would we, and I'm coming back to Professor Ekong now, if we chose to go for identification of a certain set of endowments and then creating industrial policy that is limited and time, if you will, ring-fenced in terms of sunset laws and stuff like that, so that we don't have permanent infant industries. Which would we consider the particular endowments in the deep blue terrain that Nigeria could compete in because of the endowments, and what should we do to grow the advantage that those endowments can give us in the blue? Professor,
thank you, Prof. Thank you. That is where I wanted to come in earlier, but I think I was timed out by technicalities. But I'm happy I'm back again. I wouldn't want us to rush into creating a minister of maritime, without actually understanding, for example, what you have just brought to the fore, which is, what do we have? I want to say that we have a whole lot of resources. For instance, the first thing is blue energy. We have such amount of blue energy in our resource, which include the gas, and in fact, even the crude oil in our blue environment. We have aquaculture, we have coastal and maritime tourism, and we have blue biotechnology and seabed mineral resources. These are the things we have, which goes across so many species. And if you have this is where your resourcefulness comes from, which is, for instance, if you want to still even look at the oil, You still have the oil in the blue. Can we do the oil? We have the gas that the world is now trying to move towards. And the gas that we have a whole lot of competitive advantage with our gas because the cost of production and the value, the economic value of our gas is very high, also with our crude oil. Then we have maritime resources, the maritime tourism. The maritime tourism that we have on our coastline is the maritime tourism sites, for instance, if we develop them, can become so because the kind of weather that we have in the region of Nigeria that has a coastal the coastal boundary, the weather is not very hot. The weather is good, mild, and you can even control that weather. It's not too hot or too cold. So it's a weather, you can use that as an advantage. So these are the issues that we have. And more importantly, what we don't understand that we have to do for Africa is maritime data collection. If you can collect data from the ocean bed, you will know exactly what is going to happen to you, when tsunami is going to come, when whatever is going to come. That's what we don't even do. That's why if tsunami comes to our to us now, to West African coast now, we will collect everybody because we don't even know what is coming, when it's coming, because we've not gone into that area. So maritime data, which is also for ocean-going oceanography and all of this, is very important. And we have the capacity to do that, even for the coast of West Africa and even up down to South Africa. We can do that because if you look at from South Africa up to Senegal, we don't have such facilities. We don't have such, nobody is really collecting ocean data from this side of Atlantic Ocean. So we need this data for planning. We need this data for maritime surveillance. And in fact, for you to grow your blue economy, you need to collect this kind of data. And when we do this, then we have to look for where are the strengths, so you can draw partnership. There are some agencies that are just tangential. There are some agencies that are converging. There are some agencies that whose responsibility is actually also offered by the other agencies. So we have to look at all of this before we decide what we can do. But if for the resources, like I said, we have a whole lot of competitive advantage in maritime tourism, competitive advantage in biotechnology. And we have a whole lot of advantage in aquaculture and in fact, blue energy and even the crude oil that is there in our ocean environment. So these are the things we must understand. We have it, and but all these agencies, even including NMPC, that is now prospecting in the blue environment, must be part of what we need to do. Because once you create a ministry and call it maritime ministry, it's going to be, it may look so bogus if you don't define exactly what are the strategic components and sectors in that industry.
Okay. Well, the challenge of a strategy and the industrial policy that will support it, and the competitiveness that we can attain, obviously is something that needs to be canvassed such that political parties, civil society organizations take up a role in trying to build a certain constituency for the strategy. How should we, in the face of elections that are in the wake, hold politicians accountable for how a strategy evolves around deep blue waters. In other words, should people who hold views about how the maritime should evolve be active in trying to get political parties to either endorse, adopt, or do something with their strategy?
Yes, we have to commence advocacy because we need this advocacy. And also, this advocacy will let the politicians know that they are swimming out of the swimming pot and are going to areas that they cannot swim at all if they open their eyes. Because we have destroyed the green environment and we need the blue. And we have so much in the blue. And if we don't bring up strategies now to sustainably develop the blue, like earlier speaker had said, we are going to just go to a new area to build slums. So those strategies must first of all be put in place, but we need advocacy. Because what I see in governments in Nigeria is very difficult to let government know or to convince government in what is to be planned or what should be planned for. And the realization will come after a while. Because if you look at our political process, a government needs 4 years to stay. And in 4 years, they're scrambling to do everything. Some are scrambling to steal. Some are scrambling to do things that are reasonable. At the end of the 4 years, which is too short, nothing is done. And the next option is look for another 4 years. And the brazen the approach to look for the next 4 years destroys whatever even was done in the first 4 years and creates room for people to just scramble again into another 4 years to make 8 years doing nothing. So if we wait for the politicians to lead in this direction, we're going to fail. So I think we better start with an advocacy which may be outside the political space. So we will now put it up to the politicians. Let them see. They will see that they need to embrace the blue economy or the blue economy strategy for them to know how they can make more money for the country or for themselves. Because actually, if our advocacy can get to the masses and the masses know that we have this kind of resource base and that they can make something out of it if they can push government, I think this is enough to for the citizens to push government to get into an area that will open new vista of life for them. I don't know whether I'm still on.
Yeah, very much still on.
Okay, so let me allow you flow from there. Let me see where we can go.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I have to admit that I am physically exhausted.
I know.
I have just gotten out flying and moderated another meeting. And right now I'm blanking between normalcy and not so normal state. And so I'm going to try and move our conversations towards a peak, if you will, in the next few minutes. But the question that I would like to put before Dr. Asoluka now is, if political parties were to be put under pressure to actually provide a maritime strategy, what should be the critical things that this document should reflect?
Yeah, Prof. First of all, I am not at liberty to say that, but let me hint that the Nigerian Chamber of Shipping has a committee headed by Olisa Abakoba SAN to look into this kind of matters, because the best time to make your proposal, accepted is before election. So I without prejudice to what he and the team may decide, but to have a kind of maritime roundtable forum, call it what you will. But before then, the parties will be invited to make statements on how they intend to grow and develop the maritime sector, which is so huge that it can create enormous employment potential, as well as reducing poverty almost overnight. And that being the case, any party that is serious should recall that the maritime sector is huge, and people are now looking at how they intend to unleash or at least wake up this giant that has been snoring. And the blue economy is the way to go. And if we are doing a proposal on that, of course, the challenges are enormous. And we have said the silo-mindedness of the agencies should be approached. They should begin to talk to each other. I know because each of them has an act or a law establishing it, and immediately it has tangentially any role to do. And if that role is a lucrative one, they are not going to let go, which is why we are proposing a strong ministerial umbrella that will resolve such issues. But for parties, every party should, any serious party should begin to address us on how it intends to tackle the maritime issue or growing the maritime issue, and what is the maritime vision in terms of dovetailing into the national economic growth. And I must confess to you, it's a huge one that I cannot begin to untie now. But any party that should be taken seriously should be looking at revenue sources outside the traditional oil and gas and overtaxing people and that kind of thing that you remove this, remove this, remove this. You have to stand and you have to be stable before you do certain things the Washington consensus will provide. But we are not saying it's wrong for them to insist on that. But I think they're also open to alternatives if the alternatives are well thought through. And I think the maritime sector and the blue economy is one way to go if a party should be taken seriously. So maybe later, both of us will talk about this, but it's a way to go, if I must tell you.
Okay. Now, but in the interagency rivalry that has been critical to the suboptimized sector, many functions seem to overlap, and there are laws setting up all of these agencies. Do you think that is an appropriate time to kind of bring all of these laws to an end and do new laws that more clearly demarcate the sectors and the roles of the various players? I give a very simple example that we keep talking about in the area of, let's say, clearing wrecks from our waterways. Nigerian Navy comes and says it's their mandate. The master comes, same thing. Post Authority comes, same thing. What do we need to do to align all of these laws that can open the way into this blue economy?
Yeah, this is a very important question. You see, I find it a bit curious when agencies rush to National Assembly for amendment in order to create additional powers to handle certain issues which they could have handled if they applied themselves correctly. And like I have argued when I was advising National Assembly, the best way to solve implementation problem is not to legislate over legislate. Sometimes there are other attempts to make, but you are dead on spot. Let me even shock you. Any party that wants to be iconoclastic can even question the foundation of MPA. MPA by 1954-55 Act was relevant because the level of capital accumulation was very low and there were no other financing options. Rather, the only way was for the federal government to finance it. But we now have the Land Use Act that gave lands to be controlled by the governors. So to that extent, inland waterways will always have friction with some states who will claim they have rights in terms of saying what the law, what the land should be used for. You take MPA, for instance. The law that provides every 100 meters abutting a sea or ocean belongs to Nigerian Ports Authority has become a cog. I'll give you an instance. Ibakasi Port in Akwa Ibom was delayed for some time in order to secure concurrence with MPA because MPA will tell you, hey, that land belongs to us. When I have told you that if you go to Rotterdam and many other ports, they are owned by subnational entities. And with that, you unbundle, you release the energy of the of investment, not you everybody queues in order to get the federal like this. So in terms of a new Ministry of Maritime Resources, the first thing is to review all these laws, chisel areas of conflicts, and have a direct. First is to ask yourself, what do we want to achieve? What is our vision of the maritime sector? If our vision is to use it to catalyze development in the enclave economy or municipal economy, so be it. And I think the blue economy is rightly in that direction. So nothing is so sacred. I know it's going to be a lot of fights, but you could also have your strategy. Like you mentioned the other time, the controversy between, or not controversy, but the debates between the Red Ocean, as Porter would argue, or the Blue Ocean strategy. You could look at it. I don't dismiss the Blue Ocean strategy. In fact, it's a step, a kind of progressive step over Porter's arguments of value chain and know what to specialize in niche or that kind of thing. But Blue Ocean says no. You eradicate what is superfluous, reduce what you can, raise what you can, and create new activities. And I think the Blue Ocean territory, the Blue Economy territory offers a very, very clean slate for a serious party to begin to write on.
All right. All right. I would like to begin to move towards a close to ask questions and comments about the blue economy as the path for the reconstruction of the Nigerian economy. I personally am sold on the fact that if we want real growth, we've got to be very focused. And amongst the areas that we should focus to build up is the blue economy. So if there are any questions around the growth of that sector, you can kindly indicate and put those questions or make those comments so that we can move towards a close of the session.
Yeah, Prof, I want to come in here once
Yes,
again, while still discussing strategy. There are blue economy strategies already ongoing in the world, especially in China and Asian continent, like Indonesia and Philippines, like you just said. And we can look at those strategies like the Blue Silicon Valley strategy and the Shandong Rivers strategy, because most of these are regional blocks, which is just like subnational governments, given the power to get things organized in their own area of their blue space. So we can look at all of this and take a literature review, not an issue of collecting money to travel to go and stay in somebody's town, somebody's country, and chopping in a circle. We can look at literature and see what they did and see which one can be relevant for us. Because from what we are seeing in Nigeria, why we're having interagency conflict is because of, let us call a spade a spade. Our attitude in Nigeria is very wrong. Everybody wants to steal money. We are so corrupt. So everybody's looking for one room or the other to see where money is so they can go and grab. And once they see that, that's why they are fighting. This one will not give this one information. This one will not give this one information. So there will be crisis and collision everywhere. But if you want to move out of this, all the parties, if you want to talk to political parties, all the parties must be conscious and take real decision to help this country by looking at strategies that is working elsewhere and seeing how those strategies can work in our place. And for looking at this, because the world, like I said, has become a global village. You don't need to travel to China to go and stay for 10 months to go and look at what is happening there for you to know. You can stay here in Nigeria and get those things done without spending so much money. So those strategies are there and they are working. So we can get them, look at them, dissect them, and see what could be applicable in Nigeria. That's my comment on this.
So please, I have a question. Hello, sir.
Okay.
So,
all right. Any other?
So I have a question.
All right. Go ahead, please.
Okay, sir. My question is to Professor Pachitomi. So I want to ask a question.
Yes, please ask.
Okay, here's the question. If you take a look at the Asian tigers, countries like Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the rest of them, there's one thing in common among those countries. They produce, finished goods. And that is one of the major reasons why you see their blue economy activities booming. And comparing it to that of Nigeria, in Nigeria, we hardly produce finished goods here. So in my opinion, I think it's gonna be like hindrance for our own what's it called, blue economy. So my question is this: is it possible to develop our blue economy or to take it to the next level without first taking a look into what's it called, Nigerian industrial sector? Hello, sir.
If I want to come in before Pat comes, the blue economy provides. The blue economy provides the necessary raw materials and what you need for you to build an industry. Because you can't just say, let us wait until we have industries, have something to produce, so you can go to the blue. The blue economy has resources. So first of all, you have to develop a strategic plan to go and tap into those resources and make them industrial agents and products where you can take to the world. So you have already what you can tap into to get it out. That's my answer. I'm done, Prof.
Oh,
No,
okay,
I'm
yeah.
talking of Professor Tommy.
Yeah.
Professor Tommy, are you
So
listening?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. You asked a question about interagency issues. I think this blue economy and the Maritime Resource Ministry is a fresh opportunity. Let us, with a new government, strong presidency, the engagement with National Assembly wouldn't be such a big deal. For us to know that...
reconsider those areas.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
go ahead.
Yes, so that if we need to have a new beginning, some houses will fall. Some houses will fall. If you ask me, like MPA, some part of their acts or all their acts, they are obsolete. They existed when capital accumulation was the exclusive reserve of the federal government, so that states, regions, urban couldn't handle such a project. And now things are changing, because if you have all these limits, it's like the analogy we gave before. You have a slum and you are now trying to build new roads. What are you going to do? This is the opportunity for us to start things anew. And we have to be bold, because if you do the right infrastructural support, MPA fighting with NIWA over derelicts and wreckage, or fighting with NIMASA, or fighting with one other agency, such things will go. Such things don't, they are not the focal point of these agencies. These agencies are introduced either to build the potential or capacity of Nigeria, or to facilitate trade, or to make movement easier in terms of safety, in terms of security and all that. But some of these vital reasons why the agencies are established, they are left. Like MP, of course. A port is merely a station where ships visit, keep their consignment, and they depart. And for you to, play your role as a port authority, you must make sure that the approach to the port is navigable, right? So in terms of maintaining the lanes, you have to do that. And because ships come, they drop their goods, you have to build stacking areas and warehouses. But now when we transmitted from what we call the service port to a landlord port, some of these activities were concessioned out, and nobody in MPA will say, okay, look, we are building new warehouses, and no, that is for the concessionaires. So like Professor Kong said, when we have chosen our vision, what we want to achieve, right? The mission of the ministry being to put everything to achieve that national vision of having the maritime economy enlarged in the blue economy, support the the municipal or backward integration of our economy. Anything standing by the way should be reviewed. That is a way to remove all these interagency squabble and boundary disputes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think that by way of wrapping up, I would like to say that what has happened that has been in the way of broadening the base of this economy has been the fact that regulatory risk has become central to the challenge of managing our economy. The fact that in many of these areas, we don't know who is the regulator and who is the operator. Just like the problems NMPC had in the petroleum sector, where it was both a regulator and an operator, we consistently can't figure out the role of the master. Is it a regulator? Is it an operator? Is it a revenue agency? Most of them tend to focus on being revenue agencies. So who is to grow the economy and grow opportunity areas in the economy in the way that MITI, for example, Ministry of International Trade and Industry, grew Japanese industry by seeing itself as a champion of economic opportunities. In my view, what we need desperately is government agencies to be champions, creating an enabling environment where the private sector can go in and harvest the opportunities that exist in the maritime, in the blue economy. It's important that we take a value chain approach. And it is this approach, I believe, that will make us competitive, focusing on our latent comparative advantage in building value chains off of those areas of latent comparative advantage that can enable us to be competitive globally. I want to thank you all for participating and look forward to a more robust Nigeria History Series discussion in the new year. Thank you. God bless.